and welcome back to my channel. Today I wanted to go over my August reads. I ended up reading 2 novels, half of a nonfiction, and then I read some manga that I will introduce at the very end of the video. So let's get right in with the very first book that I read for my reading 1 Japanese language book per month book club, which someday I'm gonna have to figure out a way to say that in a more condensed manner. But the first book we read was the book Kaрафuru by Mori Eto. This book was translated into English in 2021 as Colorful by Eto Mori. This book kind of continues this theme that we've been reading this year, slightly unaware, and that we're kind of sick of, but it's the concept of the seishun novel in Japanese. Seishun meaning adolescence or adolescent. Basically these novels kind of tend to focus on young male characters going through this time of their life where there's a lot of struggle with family and friends and just personal everyday emotions. We read Natsu no Niwa, The Friends, a few months ago, which was just translated as The Friends into English. I think just last month or maybe 2 months ago, we read Yoru no Bakemono, which was also translated into English. That was called The Beast That Lies Within, I believe is the English title. And so this is the 3rd seishun novel that we've read this year. We are sick of seishun novels. We will not read another one this year. We're done. We're done. too much adolescent angst, basically. But that's not to take away from this book that I think is very well done. If I were going to rank the 3, The Friends would be the number 1, this would be number 2, and then Yoru no Bakemono, the Beast That Lies Within Me. I think if you've watched a few of my videos by now, you know I did absolutely hate that book. I have strong feelings against that book. So that's a very, very low 3rd place. But yeah, Colorful is basically a book about adolescence. In what way? How is the story told? Well, basically, our protagonist has died. He is sent to a world, an outer world, and an angel comes to greet him and tells him, guess what? You've won the lottery. You have the chance to be reborn into a new body. Our protagonist says, no, I'm not interested. I'd rather just, I'm satisfied. I'd rather just call this the end. Let's move on, and why not? And the angel's like, well, no, you kind of have to kind of atone for your sins, atone for your crimes, and we need you to go through the process. So he gets sent into the body of a young boy whose name is Makoto. Makoto is sorry, my laundry just fell right in front of my eyes outside. I'll have to pick that up later, but that distracted me. But yeah, he gets sent to into the body of this young boy named Makoto, who committed suicide. But by sending our protagonist's soul into this body, Makoto actually survives the suicide. He's resuscitated and he's brought back to life. And it is now our protagonist's task to basically figure out and live Makoto's life, and figure out why did Makoto feel like he needed to commit suicide? Because on first glance, it seems he has a very loving family. It seems like he goes to a good school, and it seems like everything is very good. But it turns out there are a lot of reasons that Makoto felt like he needed to commit suicide. And so our protagonist is very much going to go through with that and go through the process to figure those things out. While at the same time, he is tasked to come up with what his own issues had been when he was alive. So he kind of has to help Makoto atone for Makoto's crimes while atoning for his own crimes. So you get this, and you go through all the teenage adolescence and the drama and the emotions, and it's definitely a book about family, and it's a book about miscommunication, and it's a book about asking for help, basically, and it's a book that really relies on the idea of kind of stepping back and just look at the broader picture. And it's very well done. Is this a book I would read in English? No, this is not exactly my genre. This is very much young adolescent fiction. I mean, this book is very popular in Japan. It's one of the best-selling books for adolescents. Can an adult read this? Yes, an adult can read it. It's a very fine book, but I mean, it's not the type of book I would typically read necessarily. It's a little bit too simple. It's a little too basic. I figured out the backstory very, very quickly, and just because if you've seen enough movies about these things, you can figure it out. So, but you know, it is very, very well done. It is very well done, and I'm not going to take away from that. So if this is something you'd be interested in, it's definitely recommended. Also, if it's a book you'd want to give to maybe a niece or a nephew or a son or a daughter or just a friend, definitely. I think they would absolutely love this. If you're of this reading age, I think you should read this. I think it's a little bit too young. No, sorry, young for middle school. I mean, for me, middle school me, I was reading Les Mis. Like, I read Les Mis in 6th grade, so I was already at a reading level that was quite high. So for me, even elementary school, I probably would not have been interested in this book. I kind of skipped this genre entirely. But yeah, like late elementary school, early middle school, for sure. I mean, this would be a good book, but an adult can read it, and it's perfectly well done. But yeah, so that's Colorful by Eto Mori. The next book I read is more in my flavor. It's more my flavor, and basically it's this book that has not been translated into English, but it's called Omokage by how do you say his last name? Ozaki. Ozaki Sekai Kan. So this guy has a very, very interesting first name. It's called Sekai Kan, which means a view of the world. Basically, this guy is actually kind of a rock star. He's a musician, and he's written quite a few books. And the reason my book club we picked it up, well, the plot sound very good, but it was also a contender, a nominee for the Akutagawa Prize. It did not win, but it was a nominee. And I've never read a nominee. I've only read prize winners. So I was very interested to see, does this have the Akutagawa Prize flavor? And it does. It does. It definitely does. I definitely understand why this was nominated. And I really, really enjoyed this book. Is it a favorite? No, it's not a favorite, but I really enjoyed the experience. So what is it about? It's dark. It definitely has a dark premise to it. So it's basically about this young girl. She's an young elementary student. I don't know, maybe 2nd, 3rd grade. And basically she spends her days, when she's not in school, she spends her time at her mother's job. Her mother works at a massage parlor, which is actually a front for sexual services. Her mother gives hand jobs to clients and whatnot. And so this young girl, our protagonist, whose name is only given once, so there's no need to say her name, but she spends her time at her mom's job, where she's separated from her mother only by a curtain. So while she is doing her homework, she can hear what's going on the other side of the curtain. But the thing is, she's so young, she doesn't understand what she is hearing. And so basically this whole book is this young girl giving her perspective of her experience as she's trying to make sense of the world around her. And it's fascinating because the thing is, like, the author plays with the Japanese language in a very interesting way. This is going to be kind of maybe hard to understand for people who don't understand how the Japanese language works. But for example, because she is a young elementary school student, she does not know all of her kanji yet. In Japanese, there are about 1,050 joyo kanji, which are everyday kanji. So the most common kanji in Japanese language that you'll see everywhere. And you learn all these, and then of course you learn many more past that. But basically there are about 1,050 characters that are very, very commonplace, and you learn that throughout school. And she knows maybe about 100 characters, 75 characters or so she doesn't know that much. So whenever she uses a word, for example, that has maybe 2 kanji in it, so for example the word shinpai, which means to worry, she'll know the kanji for shin, kokoro, which is heart, but she might not know the kanji for bai, shinpai. because that is a kanji that you learn at a higher grade level. So usually if you read a Japanese novel, if you read the word shinpai, you'll get the kanji for both the shin and the bai. But for her, she only gives the kanji for shin, and the bai is written in hiragana, which is one of the other scripts used in Japanese. So you play a lot with the language because you're representing this young girl. Similarly, when adults are speaking in this book, they speak in full kanji. So any word they use that's a little bit higher level, instead it doesn't split up the kanji in terms of what she understands. It's them speaking only in kanji, which represents the fact that she doesn't understand everything the adults are saying. So there's a lot of misunderstanding in this book. Also, cognates. So there's a very important line in the book where a client comes in. He receives a hand job from her mother, and he says, "Can I come?" And the little girl hears this, but she doesn't understand it, and she asks herself, "Where is he going?" So very, very clever. So you get a lot of that, and so this book, basically this entire book, you get this young girl experience the world, and she's always on this, this fine line between this very highly sexual world, a very highly sexual adult world, and a very young, innocent view of the world. And so basically, you can say that this line is basically the width of that curtain. Okay? If she opens the curtain, she's gonna enter the world of these sexual adults, a world that she should not be in, that she's not ready for. So she has to stay on the other side. But the entire book, we're kind of like, is she going to lean in one direction or another? Because basically, obviously, as a young child, being in those surroundings, obviously, it can have a very negative impact on your upbringing. It could lead to the child entering the sexual services herself later on in life. So very interesting book. Definitely loved that wordplay. Loved that, that daring use of is she experiencing something sexual, or is she actually experiencing something quite innocent? Like, does she know the difference? It also very much explores this really very heartwarming relationship between her and her mother. Her mother being slightly not fully cognizant of her own behavior and the impact that it could be having on her own child. So you get this very heartwarming mother-daughter relationship out of this book as well. So yeah, very much enjoyed this. Definitely Akutagawa Prize qualities to this book, because obviously, as I've mentioned in other videos that explain Akutagawa Prize definitely focuses on books that feature some sort of societal issue that exists in Japan. Doesn't mean it only exists in Japan, but definitely an issue that exists within Japan itself. And it kind of goes through that and explores character relationships as it pertains to that societal issue. So definitely like that. Very, very interesting. And I think this would be really fun to translate into English. All right, and then the last book is a non-fiction, which I have not finished. I was supposed to have finished it in August, but the end of August I got distracted by other things. Fun, cleaning. I've been cleaning a lot. I really quite enjoy cleaning, and I did a huge deep clean. I moved my refrigerator, I moved the oven, I cleaned behind, I did everything. But yeah, that took away from my reading time, especially since I kept deciding to do it at like 10 p.m. at night for no reason. But in any case, the nonfiction that I was reading is The Concubine Who Launched Modern China, Empress Dowager Cixi by Chang. So Chang is an author I have read before. I read her Mao nonfiction last year, as everyone recalls. It took me a few months to read that, not because I didn't enjoy it. Do not take that as a sign that I didn't enjoy it, but it's just sometimes you put a book down and you stop reaching for it, and you want to, but it just doesn't happen for some reason, and then you're like, why are you not going and get it into my hands? But yeah, loved the Mao biography, and similarly, I've been absolutely loving this. So Empress Dowager Cixi, it was basically, she was a simple concubine, and she was able to, via her, great intellect and like political prowess, her ability to really read a situation, she was able to sort of rise to a level where she was basically leading China in the background of her young son, who was too young to rule. So she was doing all the decision making for him. But obviously, as a woman, you can only go so far. So she was basically making all these decisions about China, but she had to like hide herself from all her advisors, and it's this whole huge thing. And the thing about this nonfiction that's important to note is that this is a nonfiction that runs incredibly contrary to other nonfiction about this historical person. This is the first biography focused on just her that I've read, but in terms of all the other Chinese history nonfiction I've read so far, she is kind of seen as a very kind of vile woman, not vile as in like a bad woman, but just like power hungry, for example, or like over assuming or like overreaching. And the thing is that Chang is arguing the fact that the woman who actually helped China, the person who actually made China what it was, and actually made China amazing and created a railroad system and open trade routes, created universities, built a navy, was actually this woman and not the male advisors. So basically Jung Chang, the author, is arguing that because she was a woman, her accomplishments were taken away from her and given to male characters, basically. Now, a lot of people disagree with this book. They're going to say, you know what, this is totally fiction, you're totally making this up, and that's up to you to decide. But it's definitely a viewpoint that makes sense, because historically speaking, that is definitely a trend that we've seen quite a bit, that actually women have made these incredible developments into society, and all their accomplishments have been taken away just because they are women. So very fascinating. Now, I actually didn't mention this when I did my wrap-up of the Mao biography, but there are definitely moments, and it was the same thing in the Mao biography, there are definitely moments where you can think, is the author over-analyzing certain texts to sort of benefit her own viewpoint? Yeah, you can definitely argue that. I remember in the Mao biography, there were places where Ju Chang would say, obviously Mao meant this, or obviously this political figure meant this. And I would think to myself, really? Is it that obvious? Is it really obvious? And so you can kind of, think of it in two ways, where sometimes it actually is obvious when you're the person who's doing the research. So for example, Jun Chang might have an entire page of context that makes a certain observation make sense, but she might only give us one sentence of that entire page. So for us, we don't get the context. So for her, it was obvious, but for us, from that one sentence, we don't have enough information to be like, okay, yeah, that is obvious. So you have to take that into consideration, but you have to take that into consideration with any nonfiction that you might read. Is the author using information to confirm their bias, or are they appropriately, or is there no bias and they're actually genuinely proving something new, something different? So it's something like I said, you have to take into consideration. But I definitely like this idea, and it does make sense that as a woman, her accomplishments were taken away just for the fact of her being a woman. So incredibly fascinating. I will be finishing this in the month of September because it's too good, and I really want to know what happens. I know what happens because I know Chinese history, but I know what happens in terms of the other viewpoint of this woman that was always considered to be the dragon lady. So very interesting to see the author's closing remarks and seeing how this woman lived the rest of her life, because this is kind of the last of the imperial family before Mao comes into power, basically. So a huge moment in Chinese history, especially since China was becoming this amazing open country and was having this huge development because of her, as the author states. And then Mao and communism kind of took that away. So very interesting. Absolutely loved it. All right, let's quickly go over the manga just to tell you what I've read without exactly talking too much about it, because I reserve that for my manga videos. I wanted to update that I have read, 9 more volumes of the soccer manga of Shoot. Love this manga. Absolutely having fun. So I'm on volume 20 now. There are 33 volumes, so 13 volumes left to go. So we'll see if I can finish that in September. But super having lots of fun with that soccer manga. Love it. Then I read the latest release of極主婦道, The Way of the Househusband. This has been translated into English. It's very popular. It's very beloved, about a Yakuza who retires and becomes just a house husband. It's cute, it's quaint, it's full of crazy Yakuza puns. So much fun. The gag repeats itself, but in a way it's always kind of fresh and fun. This, I think 8 and 9 kind of waned a little bit for me, but 10, I definitely giggled quite a bit. So very happy to have read the latest release of this. Then I have 2 manga that, as far as I'm aware, have not been translated in English. I'm going to start with the one that I think absolutely needs to be translated. People need to know about this manga, and it needs to not be limited to manga lovers. Everyone would love it. It needs to be introduced as a graphic novel and not a manga, because it is this beautiful collection. So basically, it's this one is called Nipikime no Kingyo, so the second goldfish. By this mangaka called Pampanya. So this is not a series, these are standalones, and Pampanya has written a lot of these, and basically what it is, it's kind of like short stories, like a collection of short stories, but told in a manga form. And it's all done in these, what am I trying to say? It's all done, in manga format. So short stories of everyday events and everyday child imaginings, but in a manga format. Why do I keep repeating that? And the art is absolutely beautiful. And what's really amazing is that all of the art is this incredibly realistic drawings. So let me find a beautiful page. I mean, all the pages are beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But you just have these amazing, full on beautiful illustrations. And yet, the main character is almost just drawn in pencil. Very simple lines. Everything else is ink, but the character herself, the young protagonist, is lightly penciled in. And so it just shows it and it's this manga that really just mixes the fantasy of child imagination, and just runs with it, and it's just absolutely beautiful. There's this 1-page short story that I'll show you. It's just 1 page, that's all it is. And it's, oh gosh, I wish I could find it very quickly. But what it is, oh, here it is, I found it. I lost it. Here we go. So you just have this 1 page where she sees a box of birds, and the sign says take 1 for free, and she's looking at the birds, and she's considering can I take a bird for free? And then all the birds fly away, and it just says take 1 for free brochure. So it's just so stylistically beautiful and charming and witty, and it has the most beautiful art, and even the other characters are so interesting. So while she's human, all the other characters are all animals. They all have faces of not very clear-cut animals, so they kind of look very amphibian, and just again it just creates this feeling of just this mystical feeling that separates a young child from the adult world, because this is really just little short stories of those everyday moments where you kind of question as a young child. You think, well, why does that exist? How does that exist? What does this happen? And this kind of goes through that child's process of thinking. So this needs to be translated into English right away. Everyone needs to read this. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Someone needs to translate this. Absolutely. I would do it myself, but I'm not in that. That's not my industry. But yeah, this needs to be translated immediately. And then I actually read another standalone series. It's like a duology, and I saved this for last because this is the darkest manga I have ever read. In fact, it is so dark that if you don't want to hear about it, I highly suggest you just leave right now. Okay, very dark. Again, warning you. Okay, and that is Takopi no Genzai. So it is this incredibly dark manga. I mean, there's a child suicide in the very first few, like 20 pages. We're just going there. But what is this manga about? It's about this very cute creature called Takopi. Incredibly cute. Here he is. He kind of like, he's in the shape of an octopus. And basically, he is from the planet of Happy, and he is a happy alien, and his purpose is to come to Earth and spread happiness. And he meets this young girl who is so devastated by life and has been brought down so much by bullying that she commits suicide. And basically what he is, his goal, Takopi's goal, is basically to sort of go back in time and bring happiness to this child. And the thing is that this manga is dark, and it is brutal, and it is cruel, and the art is just so immaculate and perfect and amazing, especially when you compare the dark, grim, realistic art to like the very fluffy, shoujo like character of Takopi. In any case, this was so fascinating to read. My friend absolutely loved it, and typically he would not go for this kind of thing, but he thought it was really impressive as well. It's actually creating quite a wave in Japan right now, and like kind of like not the shonen readers type world, but the people who kind of like more underground manga. This is creating quite a wave, and it's very impressive, and I will definitely talk about this more next time I do a manga catch up, but I couldn't help myself talking about it in this video. All right, that is everything I read in the month of August. I'm really looking forward to the March of September. The March of September. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to the month of September, and I hope to see you then. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!